With talks of a potential Nintendo Switch 2 on the horizon, I thought it'd be fun to speculate 10 things I want to see from it. Or, more specifically, the Nintendo Switch's successor. The Nintendo Switch is a great system and all, I love it, but with how you can clearly see that the system is starting to show its age a bit and how it's already been on the market for 6 years now, all the talks and speculations about a new system from Nintendo seems more imminent than it doesn't. Now, a while back, I did make a video talking about what I want to see from Nintendo's next system, but I feel that didn't necessarily do the topic justice in my opinion. It has the ultimate game library, the ultimate feature, and I'm of course talking about the system switching feature by the way, and it's the ultimate success for Nintendo. I ran out of ideas for that one. This was a weird era for the channel. And since that time, I've came up with more ideas for what the system could potentially be, so this won't just be a simple little rehash of that other video. I'm still not running out of stuff to talk about, I swear. But without further ado, let's discuss 10 things I want to see from Nintendo's next system. Now, of course we're going to have upgraded specs on the next Nintendo console. I don't necessarily know how much more compared to the Switch, but we do know it'll still be stronger than the Switch regardless. Games, mainly Nintendo made, still look fairly good running on it, and does show with the right amount of work from the game's developers, you could get graphically demanding games from other systems to look and play competently on the Switch despite being an obvious downgrade from other systems. But other games, however, there's no hope for them. Now, in some instances, this could more so be a result of developers taking their games on more powerful hardware and not optimizing them properly to get it to run on Switch, hence the graphical and frame rate problems that a lot of big AAA titles on the system deal with. Even some first-party Nintendo-made games struggle to some extent, and the issues essentially narrows down to glitchy or blurry textures, bad frame rates, and long load times. So I think having a new Nintendo system with specs that are to the point where developers don't have to do more work than they probably need to get their games to run on it, or barely get it to run on it at all in some cases, would basically be essential. Also, increase the storage capacity on this thing. Game files are only getting bigger and bigger, and it's just annoying how on top of spending $300 to $350, whatever Nintendo plans to price this thing at, and charge a large sum of money for SD cards when more storage should have already been built into the system to begin with, is just getting old at this point. They took a step in the right direction with 64 gigabytes on the Nintendo Switch OLED in 2021, but even then, that's still not enough. I'd say for the minimum, 128 gigabytes would suffice, but I'd personally be rooting for 500 gigabytes or more. And one more thing I want to mention because wow, the number 10 spot is way longer than it needs to be. I think it's time 4K makes its grand debut on a Nintendo console for the first time. 1080p for a lot of games on Switch still look fairly good, but when looking at other systems and how their games look, it sort of makes the visuals for a lot of Nintendo Switch games look worse. I mean, I'm not saying that Nintendo needs to add 4K support to their new system, but I think it would go a long way to ensure that a lot of big AAA games that struggle so much graphically on Switch wouldn't have as much of a harder time on the new system. And usually for Nintendo platforms, I don't really care when they focus more on games and the overall power of their systems because in most instances, the stellar game library completely overshadows the idea that this system isn't as strong as the others. And while I'm still fine with that approach on Switch, the weaker hardware seems to be impacting a lot more games than you would think, and just highlights how these games need to run on more powerful systems to get them to play like normal games. Alright, whew, done with the number 10 spot. Tell me this wasn't as long as you'd think and I wouldn't feel as bad knowing that this was the longest part of the whole video. In the past, Nintendo either appealed to the casual gamers with their systems or the hardcore gamers, not necessarily in the middle. For hardcore gamers, think something along the lines of the Nintendo 64 and GameCube. For the casuals, think the Wii and the Wii U. Hardcore gamers are people who enjoy more traditional and also deeper gaming experiences that offers deep worlds and characters to explore, while casual gamers are more so the people who aren't as big into games and just casually enjoys a quick gaming session with friends like what you'd find in something like Wii Sports for example. But I do really like how with the Switch, Nintendo successfully managed to focus on both the hardcore and casual gamers. For every Tears of the Kingdom or Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, a Nintendo Switch Sports was lurking around the corner. And I understand that games like those might not be for everyone, but it just feels like a much needed breath of fresh air for the system's game library and actually helps make the Nintendo Switch appeal to everyone with how they have both the hardcore gamers accommodated as well as the casuals. And this is really what I want to see from the next Nintendo console. A strong focus for both hardcore and casual gamers as a way to have both kinds of gamers taken care of. I'm not saying that this thing needs to be another Wii, but release games like those every once in a while and I'd be happy. And only me. Doesn't matter what kind of gamer you are, having backwards compatibility on any console for that matter is a joy. It feels like a momentous occasion when you find out this new system you want is going to have the ability to play games from the previous generation of gaming. What the fuck? I mean, when you think about it from a technical perspective and how the Nintendo Switch uses cartridges whereas the Wii U used CDs, it obviously makes sense, but it doesn't make it any less of a major loss in my opinion. That's why I believe when the next Nintendo system releases and how it could potentially use cartridges, I think this is a prime opportunity to bring back backwards compatibility as a mainstay on Nintendo consoles again. It's just such a nice feature to have, even if you're still going to play the new stuff made for that console specifically more. But if you're feeling a little nostalgic, this also gives you the opportunity to revisit the old stuff you played a generation prior without the hassle of plugging it back in. And plus, for people who never owned a Switch, which, hey, at least some dignity remains, it would allow players to experience some of the Switches, or even some Wii U games too with all the ports for the first time, and create new Nintendo fans in the process. I mean, I was already a fan of Nintendo when I had the Wii, but when I realized that this thing could play GameCube games too, and even when I eventually got a few to play, it made me really appreciate Nintendo a whole lot more. So I think having backwards compatibility with the Switch on Nintendo's next system would be huge. The Nintendo Switch's operating system is very quick, snappy, and easy to use, which, you know, was nice and all, but so much of the personality that was established with the Wii, Wii U, and 3DS's operating systems were completely non-existent here. It by no means ruined the system or stuck out as a major problem or anything like that, but it felt less satisfying to boot up the system when there was no menu music or fun little animations to greet you throughout like with those systems. Plus, with some odd changes like having the Mii Maker be in the settings instead of on the menu itself and basic features like a web browser not present at all, it feels lacking in terms of personality and features as well. Now, I'm not saying that the next system needs to have the fanciest menu of all time, and if anything, it frankly doesn't even need it at all, but it'd be nice to have some personality compared to what we got here. And actually, I really dig the fan-made menus that people have made online. Many of those are really well done, and if Nintendo makes the next system's UI something like any of those, that would be really cool. Remember Nintendo Labo, the accessory for the Nintendo Switch that has you build and create your own little inventions out of cardboard that everybody still remembers? Everybody? Remember Ring Fit Adventure, the fitness-based game that has you putting your Joy-Con in a ring and has you using it to exercise? You live on Earth, right? Remember 1-2 Switch, the game where you look your opponent in the eye instead of on the screen to participate in shallow and boring as hell minigames that will keep you entertained for half an hour and that's it? Man, what do you mean this game is bad? It has samurai training. And although the quality for some of these isn't exactly the highest, it's incredibly reminiscent of Nintendo in the past, who always loved experimenting with weird and cool little things that forever changed the way we play games. Just like with the casual-based games, I get that these kinds of things aren't for everyone, but I love the more experimental side of Nintendo, as it really feels like so much of this stuff is something that other companies wouldn't know how to take advantage of in a solid way, yet Nintendo does exactly that. I'm not saying that this is what the next Nintendo console needs to have, but if it has some creativity and experimentation poured into it like with the Nintendo Switch, then I am all for its return on the next system. Now this slot on the list doesn't really have much to do with the system itself, as it's more so for what the system comes with out of the box. It always felt incredibly bizarre when a game system doesn't come with a game out of the box, as when you get the system and not a game alongside it, then what are you going to do with this thing? Use it as a doorstop? Games are the reason we buy these systems, so when you're selling the system itself but not the game, then frankly, what's the point? Although, I do understand how companies don't want to give away their games for free, but does that really make selling 1-2 Switch separately for $50 that much better than selling it with the Switch itself? I mean, yeah, the game isn't very good, but it would have given the Switch's $300 retail price more value. But as it is now, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, the Switch is still selling phenomenal, But I think the next Nintendo console could really benefit from having a pack and title included to give it more value out of the box, no matter what Nintendo decides to price it at. And while adding any game to the package will automatically give it more value, I think adding a game that's meant to be a technical showcase for the system will be the ideal choice. Nintendo Switch Online is a pretty good online-based service overall. Yeah, that's right, I'm brave enough to say it. Just kidding, I hate the service, please don't leave. But despite that fact, some parts of the service are more glaring and questionable than others, and forcing you to communicate with your friends or other people online through the annoying smartphone app is probably the most notorious. It's 2023, or in the case of when the service released, 2018. So why are we being forced to use a smartphone app when better alternatives already exist? And I mean, hell, some games just require the use of a built-in microphone into a headset, allowing you to chat away with no smartphone app in sight, making Nintendo's approach to this far more annoying, and really shows that in some areas, they're just stuck in the past. And that's something that needs to be addressed with the next system. Get rid of the smartphone app, add a built-in microphone into the controller somewhere, or just make it so that you could plug in a headset that has a mic built into it and chat away with little to no steps involved, because I guarantee you, I'm sure we're all gonna survive if a smartphone app made for voice chat won't exist on the next system. Now, I know applications like the forecast, news, and photo channels didn't really add all too much on the Wii, but I don't care, I just love the idea that a video game console released in 2006 let you check the weather. And I'm not saying that the next system needs to have a weather or news app, as you can just go on your smartphone for that, but more applications like the photo channel and internet browser, or other non-gaming related applications like what the Wii and Wii U had would be cool to see again. The Nintendo Switch was severely lacking in that department, and I would understand if Nintendo doesn't want to do something like that again because maybe they just want the focus of their systems to be game related and game related only. But come on, man, the photo channel, this would be so cool to have on a Nintendo console again. And just like with the Wii and Wii U, I don't think it would add anything substantial to the overall system, but it would be fun to have stuff like this again, as it feels like Nintendo has kinda abandoned their more creative side in recent years. Oh, I forgot this thing is supposed to be a game console. Man, I hate when this happens. Now look, whenever Nintendo decides to release this thing, whether in 2024 or 2025, it needs to launch with games that people actually want to play. Now, I am well aware of how no console launch is perfect for that matter, and I'm not saying that this thing needs to have the best launch lineup of all time, but rather, it should have a decent number of games where not every game might not be something you'd be itching to play, but have a couple games in there depending on how big the lineup is where they actually justify buying this thing, like what Breath of the Wild was for the Switch. Again, not saying it needs to be perfect or even great for that matter, but as long as you have a few games in there that you can't get on other systems and are fairly good in their own right, then that's really all that matters at the end of the day. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I'm kinda on the fence about having Nintendo's next system just be the Nintendo Switch 2. I like the excitement of seeing how unique a new console is compared to the last one. Sure, it might have new games to play on it, but if it's just more of what we got prior, then it's definitely gonna kill a little bit of that excitement for me. But one feature that I believe should be carried over from the Nintendo Switch onto Nintendo's next system is the switching feature. Having a portable tablet that you can dock into the TV to play games on the big screen is such a great feature to have, especially when you have massive console-defining titles like Tears of the Kingdom and Metroid Dread in a portable format. It's so cool, and I desperately want to see this brought back on the next system. But at the same time, it's also a little hard to want this as well, because it would essentially make it a Nintendo Switch 2 unless Nintendo does something drastic with it, which, if you already have one major selling point that everyone's going to be attracted to, do you really need another one? I mean, don't get me wrong, if the system does end up being just a Nintendo Switch 2 or Switch X, whatever the hell Nintendo wants to name this, I'm still going to be excited. It's not going to be something I need to consult my therapist for, but a lot of that uniqueness from every new console Nintendo makes just won't be there. And while it'll still be exciting to say the least, at the end of the day, it'll probably just be a newer Nintendo Switch, and that's about it. But I don't care, man. Bring the switching feature back. I want another opportunity to play Mario Kart 8 Deluxe in the shower and have the same reaction every time.
No way! Really?
And those are 10 things I want to see from Nintendo's next system. Now, sure, there's definitely an argument to be made that some of the things that I've mentioned are more realistic than others, and there's a chance that 70% of the stuff might not even happen, but hey, who's to say none of it will ever happen? I always enjoy speculating about this kind of stuff, and with how prevalent talks regarding Nintendo's next system on the internet is right now at this current point in time, it feels like we're getting closer and closer to seeing what it'll be. And if there's anything you want to see from Nintendo's next system, please let me know. And with that, we're done. And that's going to wrap up today's video. If you enjoyed the video, then please consider subscribing and checking out my other videos on my channel where you'll find more videos like this one. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.